Hello, this is Mike Sweeney from sabercoaching.com, and I've been thinking a lot about conflict. Throughout my career, I've been put in roles where I've had to drive a lot of change. So there's been opportunity for tension and conflict, and there's some positive and negative connotations around that conflict. And in the coaching that I do, some of the work is looking at current state and desired state and establishing some conflict between those two that drives energy forward. As I was working on my curriculum for a course on developing high-performing teams, I thought about what's the role of conflict with high-performing teams. And I talk about high-performing teams as getting better results, but also having a positive team experience. So how do you have a positive team experience, get better results, and deal with conflict? So I did a little bit of research, and I found a couple things. Healthy conflict, of course, is necessary for high-performing teams. And interestingly enough, diverse teams, meaning teams comprised of people who are different than you, different backgrounds, different upbringing, maybe different cultural backgrounds, are smarter and more innovative. They also tend to feel less comfortable. So there's likely more conflict, more friction, and it can feel harder, but the outcomes are better. And there's a couple articles that I'm going to link from Harvard Business Review that I think are pretty good. And then a little bit more, I'll give you one other link to a YouTube video that I thought was really interesting about how to manage conflict. The first thing is splitting conflict into two buckets. One is task or cognitive conflict, and the other is relationship or affective conflict. If you look at the task conflict, that might be differences of opinion, disagreements, different viewpoints, and then the relationship or affective conflict is typically emotional or interpersonal differences. And conflict sometimes can be summarized often as, well, it's not what you said, it's the way you said it. So sometimes we have to find a way to get beyond the interpersonal emotional conflict to be able to talk about the task and cognitive conflict. So I've come up with a summary in the form of the 3 C's. Clarity, compassion, and courage. And those are the kind of 3 frames that I'll use. When it comes to clarity, getting a clear understanding of what the conflict is and where it's coming from is important. And I'll say that there are kind of 2 parts of seeking clarity. One is on the speaker side, and one is on the receiver side. Now I'm going to give you a link to some information that I put together in a cleaner format. But so on the speaker side, well, you have to use a little bit of tact and think that the other person is going to have some feelings and emotions about their point of view. So use some tact and plan a thoughtful delivery. Second is ask for permission. And sometimes it's not a good time for somebody entering a conversation with some conflict. So just, hey, is this a good time? I want to talk about an issue that came up yesterday or a disagreement between the teams. And then finally, especially if you're someone like me who tends to thrive in the moment and likes to say the thing that I feel like needs to be said in the moment, I'm not always artful with the delivery of that. So sometimes I have to take a step back and delay and actually plan that thoughtful delivery. On the person maybe receiving the introduction to conflict, maybe the person in a listener role, the first thing maybe you can do is separate content from delivery. Try to look beyond what the person is saying, especially maybe they're showing some frustration, and think about the what that they're saying. Especially if you have some a relationship built up with that person, listen for the what. See if you can assume positive intent. They may not be seeking to take your project off track. They may not be looking for territory, but really assume positive intent. And then listen for the what, not the who. If there's frustration about a particular thing, see if you can go for that who and the content of that who. So that's clarity. And hopefully, at least in the beginning, what you're talking about is very clear. The second C is compassion, and that is really seeking a cognitive understanding of somebody else's feelings, and that's different than empathy, which can be burdensome or emotionally draining for people. So enter with some compassion, and with that compassion, you can, as a topic is presented, as conflict is introduced, ask open, clarifying questions, and try to understand and explore the different point of view that person has. because you might learn something. Listen actively for those differences and what's driving those differences. And then finally, discuss the impact of that person's point of view. So if you can really understand where they're coming from and figure out the impact, that can certainly help the conflict. And then finally, it takes courage to have healthy conflict. One, it takes courage to get past the passive-aggressive nature sometimes you find in organizations or small teams, get past those pocket vetoes, and have the courage to get the different viewpoint on the table and listen to the opposing side. Be okay with the discomfort. Not everybody likes to have conflict, especially as it leans into affective. And people have different points of view on when it's healthy and when it's unhealthy conflict. So be okay in some of that tension, because hopefully if you can work through it, you can move forward in a more productive way that keeps that positive experience going. And then finally, try if you can, once you have clarity, once you have compassion to that other person's point of view, see if you can get on the same side of the table looking at the particular conflict, and see if you can find a win-win where both points of views are honored and you're able to resolve the conflict in a healthy way. So I mentioned in a couple videos before that I've launched a new course on developing high-performing teams. So I had to check myself and see, well, did I actually build in this approach to conflict into the curriculum? Well, I think so. And you can just see a visual here just briefly. Clarity relates to having a clear set of clear ambition and set of priorities and goals and accountability around those goals. So that maps to the clarity. Around compassion, you can have compassion if you understand somebody else's strengths and their point of view and the collective team strengths. And then if there's a container for shared consciousness and you have those opportunity for conflict-filled conversations, if they're calendared, that has the opportunity to build compassion. And then finally, courage. If you build courage into your operating principles and you are focused on thinking about lessons learned and what's working, what's not working, that's another opportunity to have a courage-filled team. Productive conflicts are an important part of getting better results and a positive team experience. If you disagree or you have questions about this approach or an example that you want to see how you go through those 3 C's, go ahead and drop those in the comments. If you have a topic that you want me to research a little bit and come back with a point of view, happy to do it. And if you want to explore the course, I'll put the link in the notes below. Again, this is Mike Sweeney from sabercoaching.com. Have a good one.